Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, January 25th. I'm Ariel O'Sullivan, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The government's announcement to build 2,500 new housing units in Judea and Samaria is drawing mixed international reaction. In a rare rebuke of the action, Australia's Foreign Minister Julie Bishop today expressed concern over Israel's settlement enterprise, calling on the Jewish state to cease unilateral steps which it claims undermine the peace process. Yesterday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said they have approved plans to build 2,500 new housing units in the West Bank, primarily in existing settlement blocks. In a written statement, Lieberman said the new construction plans come in response to housing needs in the area. Tuesday's decision came 2 days after Israel approved the construction of some 600 new homes in East Jerusalem and follows a Sunday phone conversation between Netanyahu and the new U.S. President Donald Trump. After the announcement, Netanyahu said, "We are building and we will continue to build." In what seemed as a sharp break from the policies of former U.S. President Barack Obama, the Trump administration declined to comment on Israeli plans to build more homes in the West Bank, saying the issue will come up for discussion during next month's meeting between Prime Minister Netanyahu and the U.S. President.
Israel continues to be a huge ally of the United States. He wants to grow closer with Israel to make sure that it gets the full respect that it deserves in the Middle East. And what he's going to do is, as I mentioned yesterday, we're going to have a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu who will continue to discuss that.
The European Union was quick to condemn Israel's decision to build thousands of new homes in the West Bank, saying the plan seriously undermines the prospects of peace with the Palestinians. The EU issued a statement saying it regretted that Israel is proceeding with the policy despite ongoing international concerns and objections, which have been constantly raised at all levels. The position was echoed inside the Palestinian Authority.
The Israeli declaration of 2,500 new settlement units in the occupied territories is nothing but a declaration of war on peace, a declaration of war on two-state solution. This means that Israeli government is determined to violate international law and the most recent resolution of United Nations Security Council 2334. When Netanyahu says less than a state, that would mean less than peace and less than security. This is very dangerous policy, and the whole world must impose sanctions immediately on this Israeli government to stop this violation of international law.
Meanwhile, after previously saying they would carefully review the matter, officials in the U.S. State Department said today that for the meantime they will freeze the money promised by former President Obama to the Palestinian Authority. The sources said they intend to postpone the decision until a new Secretary of State is officially appointed, stressing that the money will be handed over to the Palestinians only if it turns out that it goes along with Trump's policies. On Friday, just hours before he left office, Obama announced he would release $221 million to the PA. Texas Congresswoman Kay Granger responded to the move last night, calling the Obama administration's decision inappropriate and adding that she personally worked hard to make sure that no American taxpayers' dollars would fund the PA unless very strict conditions were met. Congressional holds are generally respected by the executive branch but are not legally binding after funds have been allocated. And if you're planning a trip to the Sinai, please note a severe travel advisory has been issued against traveling there. The Bureau for Counterterrorism released the Level 1 warning, calling on the Israeli public to avoid visiting the area and urging all Israelis currently there to leave immediately. The travel warning, which describes a very high and concrete threat, came ahead of the anniversary of Egyptian uprising, which is being marked today. The Bureau said that based on previous years, annual protests marking the 2011 uprising that toppled Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak have turned deadly. Education Minister and head of the Jewish Home Party himself, a member of the Security Cabinet, Naftali Bennett, said today that the slated release of the State Comptroller's report criticizing the decision-making process during Operation Protective Edge is not likely to have much security significance, but rather help plan for future confrontations. Speaking today, Bennett, who was a staunch critic of the handling of the 2014 war with Gaza, reiterated his stance that the Prime Minister did not properly present the tunnel threat to the forum. However, Bennett stressed the report should be used for learning and improving, rather than making heads roll. Speaking last night before the Federation of Local Authorities, Netanyahu rejected claims that he failed to properly prepare before fighting broke out. Netanyahu asserted that together with the defense minister and chief of staff, the operation was managed responsibly and in a firmly, rationally, and assertive manner. He insisted he had provided appropriate information and military assessments, stressing that he specifically presented the tunnel threat as one of the 4 strategic threats that endangers Israel. Celebrity Rabbi Yeshayahu Pinto was released from prison today after serving a 1-year sentence for bribing a senior police officer and obstruction of justice. In a statement, Pinto said he used his 12 months in prison to immerse himself in learning. He said that while in jail, he wrote 15 books and over a dozen pamphlets, some of which have already been distributed to various Jewish communities around the world. The well-known rabbi was convicted of attempting to bribe Ephraim Bracha, who served as the head of Police National Fraud Squad, in exchange for information about corruption investigations into several charities he ran. Bracha rejected the bribes and reported these attempts to the superiors, and he later committed suicide in the midst of a social media smear campaign initiated in part by Pinto supporters. Apparently, it won't be long before another rabbi goes to jail. Israel's former Ashkenazi chief rabbi Yonah Metzger will be imprisoned for corruption. According to a plea bargain agreement reached with the prosecution, Metzger will serve a sentence of 3.5 years in prison and pay a $1.3 million fine. The former rabbi has been slapped with a slew of charges, including money laundering, fraud, theft, conspiracy, breach of trust, tax evasion, and accepting bribes. He was also accused of profiting from donations from charitable organizations and for stealing money he raised for his yeshiva of his Tel Aviv synagogue. In a corruption act now called the Conversion Affair, Metzger received bribes from foreigners who wished to convert to Judaism. Well, 21 years have passed since the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, but political incitement is still strong. So says Rabbi Dov Lipman, a former MK from Yesh Atid, who has just co-authored a book on the assassination called Words Can Kill. He spoke with IBA News.
I came across a book that was written by a former Shin Bet agent named Dvir Kariv, written in Hebrew, about the fact that he was together with Yigal Amir, the assassin of Yitzhak Rabin, for the few days following the assassination, and that he made the decision to kill Yigal Amir. He made a well-thought-out decision. The right thing to do for Israel is for me to kill Yigal Amir. The title of the book is Words Can Kill, the lead-up to the assassination and how leaders who had no intention to inspire violence, they were not going to be violent themselves, but the political climate and the atmosphere in the country that was established by the top created a situation where a crazy person could feel justified in killing a prime minister. And I was reading these messages and just the whole lead up to the story, the personal side, the emotions, the passion, the political elements, and I thought to myself, this applies today.
So what's your contribution to the book? Did you just translate it or did you change it?
No, so I changed it. It's adapted. I took the book as Dvir wrote it, but adapted it to an English-speaking population and rewrote it in my own words. There are parts of the narrative which are Dvir's direct words translated because of the power of the first-person account of I took my hand, I put it on the gun, et cetera, et cetera. But my goal was that it should be appealing to an English-speaking audience. They could relate to it, so it's very much adapted, and I retold the story and repackaged it in a different way than he wrote it in Hebrew. I did add 2 other chapters to the book. One chapter is about religion and state in Israel. The other chapter, though, is the lessons for today. The lessons for today. We just went through an election campaign in the United States where there was rhetoric like we've never seen before. And I went back and studied, I studied past election campaigns. There's always been strong passions, but the rhetoric that's been used on both sides was at an all-time high. And now we're post-inauguration. I'm not taking any sides in the American election. I didn't take any sides. I didn't have a vote. But there's been a democratically elected president. Now, what will the rhetoric be like on both sides? You had a demonstration against the inauguration. That's legitimate. You can have a demonstration. We believe in freedom of speech. But when I saw a very popular figure stand up in that demonstration and say, I've thought about blowing up the White House, that terminology, that pop star is not going to blow up the White House or hurt anyone. But there are crazy people out there who hear that terminology, who hear someone they admire as a musician, as a rock star saying that, someone who is very much against the sitting president. Those are the kinds of terminologies which can lead a crazy person to do something terribly horrible and break the rules of democracy.
How is this book being received in Amazon? Is it 21 years after the assassination? Why is this interesting?
It's amazing for me to see that when we got the reports from Amazon, that it's #1 in numerous categories on Amazon. Amazon is a site that sells millions of books a day, and it's #1. Clearly, it's touching a chord.
Are we seeing some of this sort of hatred, this incitement now in this present day?
When you have a leader come out and talk about Arabs coming in droves to vote, correct, that's not a call to violence at all, and I agree with that. But that's creating an atmosphere in a country of group against group, of population against population. And there was an apology afterwards for it, but again, we have to be so careful in how we talk. We are a democracy in Israel, and we're proud of that. But we live in a country where the issues are filled with passion, issues of life and death on both sides of the equation. And the call from this book is that leaders, both in Israel and around the world, have to be cautious in the words that they use. Because I'll tell you, Yigal Amir, the assassin of Prime Minister Rabin, told Dvir Kariv, Dvir asked him, how do you think you'd be received out in the broader public? And he said, I'd be a hero.
The terrorists who bombed Brussels' Zaventem airport last March may have been targeting Jews and Americans, according to leaks by U.S. and Belgian investigators. Quoting anonymous sources, the AFP wire service stated that unreleased security footage shows one of the bombers following an ultra-Orthodox traveler. According to sources, the attackers were also obsessed with Israelis, and an unexploded bomb was found between the check-in counters for United and El Al Airlines. Another source was even more explicit, asserting that the terrorists clearly wanted to kill a Jew. 2 Hasidim were injured during the attack, which came less than 2 years after a French-Algerian man killed 4 people during a shooting incident at Brussels' Jewish Museum. Turning abroad to Germany, where authorities have arrested over a dozen men suspected of plotting attacks on refugees and Jews. The suspects were detained during a series of pre-dawn raids at a series of homes and sites in 6 states. This as part of a federal investigation on far-right suspects who were allegedly forming a right-wing extremist organization and planning to attack Jewish communities. At least 200 officers took part in the morning raids. Prime Minister Netanyahu met this week with visiting Croatian Prime Minister Andrej Plenković in Jerusalem. While visiting Yad Vashem yesterday, Plenković vowed to do more to combat anti-Semitism. More on this report from IBA's Sam Sokolov.
My dedication to fight every form of hatred, racism, and Holocaust denial has been reinforced by the 2 days visit and by the remembrance of over 100 Croatian righteous among the nations.
Plenkovic's comments came less than a day after Croatia's Jewish community announced its intention to boycott his government's upcoming Holocaust commemorations. This is the 2nd year in a row that the community has taken such a step, which it says comes in response to official relativization of the Holocaust. Croatia has come under heavy criticism by Jewish groups for minimizing the role of its wartime Ustasha regime in the Nazi genocide. The group was responsible for the murders of over 500,000 Serbs and the majority of the country's Jews. Also on Tuesday, the Simon Wiesenthal Center issued a letter of protest to the country's delegation in Tel Aviv, following reports that a local school declined to erect a Holocaust exhibition because it portrayed some Croatians in a bad light. The issue of historical memory has been particularly contentious in Eastern Europe, especially among former communist states such as Hungary and Ukraine. The Jewish community of Hungary officially boycotted its government's Holocaust commemorations in 2014 over allegations of state-sponsored Holocaust revisionism. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Jews were up in arms in 2015 after Parliament passed a law honoring members of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, an independence movement responsible for the murders of thousands of Jews and ethnic Poles. This is Sam Sokol, IBA News.
Just days before the world marks International Holocaust Day, a Holocaust memorial was defaced in the Italian city of Milan. A cobblestone bearing the name of a local Holocaust victim was splashed with black paint. The stone, which stood outside the former home of Nazi victim Dante Cohen, was what is called a stumbling stone, a type of mini-monument installed in front of the homes of victims across the continent. And in related news, ahead of the Holocaust Memorial Day, which is marked this Friday, thousands of people, including politicians and celebrities from around the world, have in the past week been posting pictures of themselves online bearing signs stating, "I remember," or "We remember," as part of a social campaign invited by the World Jewish Congress. According to the WJC, more than 200,000 people have sent in their images, some of which are being displayed at the Auschwitz Museum in Poland this week. Among those who have submitted photos are French and German Muslim leaders, Israeli lawmakers, celebrities, Holocaust survivors, and Rwandan schoolchildren. In a statement, WJC CEO Robert Singer said that the goal of the project was to remind the world that such horrors could happen again. Army radio, known in Hebrew as Galat, is being moved from the control of the IDF to the Defense Ministry. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman approved the move at the recommendation of the IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot, who, like many of his predecessors, sought to rid the Army of non-military functions. The decision has been blasted by many, including Zionist Union MK Nachman Shai, a former IDF spokesman himself, fearing the popular radio station would lose its journalistic freedom now that it is subordinate to Lieberman, the head of the Israel Beitenu party. The move is expected to take place over the next 3 months. In finance, stocks were up across the board at the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and the shekel was mixed. Here are the numbers. The weather. The forecast calls for cloudy skies with a dramatic drop in temperature. Scattered showers are expected in the south, and they'll spread to the north, followed by thunder showers and strong winds tomorrow night. Here are the expected highs and lows for the next 24 hours. That's our broadcast for today. Laura Cornfield will be at this desk tomorrow to bring you the latest news from Jerusalem. Please join her. Until then, I'm Ariel O'Sullivan, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.